How do you do? You're Mrs. Webb, is that right? Oh, I see you've had one lesson already. Who was the instructor on that, Mrs. Webb? Mr. Adams. I'm sorry, here it is, Mr. Adams. Well, just let me read ahead and kind of familiar myself with the case. Um, how fast were you going when Mr. Adams jumped from the car? 75. And where was that? In your driveway. Um, how far had Mr. Adams gotten in the lesson? Backing out. I see. You were backing out at 75, and that's when he jumped. Did he cover starting the car and the other way of stopping? What's the other way of stopping? Throwing it in reverse. That would do it. You're right. That would do it. All right. Do you want to start the car? Um, Mrs. Webb, you just turned on the lights. You want to start the car. They all look alike, don't they? No, I don't know why they designed them that way. Um, all right, let's pull out into traffic. Now, what's the first thing we're going to do before we pull out into traffic? Well, what was the first thing Mr. Adams did before you pulled out into traffic? Well, I mean, besides praying. No, what I had in mind was checking the rear view mirror. You see, we always want to check the rear. Don't pull out! Uh, but please don't cry. I'm sorry, but there was this bus, Mrs. Webb. All right, the lane is clear now. You want to pull out? Oh, now that wasn't bad at all. You might want to try it a little slower next time. All right, let's get up a bit more speed and gradually ease it into second. Well, I didn't want to cover reverse this early, but as long as you have shifted into it. Uh, well, of course you're nervous. I'm nervous. And I'm not just saying that, I'm really very nervous. Well, just don't pay any attention to their honking. You're doing fine. You're not blocking anyone's lane. No, as long as you're here on the safety island, you are not blocking anyone's lane. All right, you want to start the car? Oh, while you're turning the lights off, why don't you turn off the heater? All right, there we are. Let's just get up a bit of speed. That's the way. Now let's practice some turns. Um, the important thing on turns is not to make them too sharp. Just kind of make a gradual. Now that was fine. That was a wonderful turn. It's hard for me to believe you only had two lessons after you make a turn like. Are you sure you haven't had it more now? Oh, I find that very difficult to believe. One little thing. This is a one-way street. Well, no. Actually, it was partly my fault. You see, but you were in the left-hand lane and you were signaling left, and I just more or less assumed you were going to turn left. Same to you, fella. No, I don't know what he said, Mrs. Webb. All right, let's pull into the alley up there and practice a little alley driving. This is something a lot of the schools leave out, and we think it's pretty. You're going too fast, Mrs. Webb. You were up around 60, and that's kind of a sharp turn there. All right, just drive down the alley. That's the way. Mrs. Webb, maybe we better stop here. Well, I don't think you're going to make it between the truck and the building, Mrs. Webb. Mrs. Webb, Mrs. Webb, I don't think you're going to. Mrs. Webb, I really, I, I really didn't think you were going to make it. That just shows we can be wrong too. No, I'll get out on your side. That's all right. Oh, Mrs. Webb, maybe it might be a good idea if we went over to the driving area. They have a student driver area over a few blocks away, and maybe traffic throws you. Maybe that's the problem. Well, turn here on the street. Right, and it's only about a block up. All right, turn right here. Well, now that was my fault again. You see, I meant the next street, not this man's lawn. Sir, sir, would you mind turning off the sprinkler for just oh, newly seated? Is that right? That's always the way, isn't it? I don't suppose it is so funny. Oh, all right, Mrs. Webb. You want to back out and get off the man's creeping bend, is that right? Yeah, just back out, Mrs. Webb. Thank you very much, sir, for. Oh, oh, now we've hit someone, Mrs. Webb. Oh, remember, you're going to watch the rearview mirror. Remember, we covered that. The red light blinded you. The flashing red light blinded you. The flashing red light on the car you hit blinded you. Yes, officer, she was just telling me about it. All right. All right. Mrs. Webb, I'm gonna have to go with the officer to the police station. They don't believe it, and they'd like me to describe it. And now the other officer is going to get into the car, and he is going to drive you back to the driving school, and then you are to meet us at the police station. My name is Frank Dexter, Mrs. Webb. Why do you ask? You want to be sure and get me next time?